Hi everyone, and I'm back again, and as I said last time, there are just so many movies coming out for the Oscar season, and I really have to go see these films so that I kind of know what's happening. And like a lot of film buffs, it's a great time for movies. So the film today is Call Me By Your Name by Luca Guadagnino, who's a French-Italian director, and in fact this is the third in a trilogy. And it's gotten a lot of acclaim. It swept Sundance in 2017, and now it's up for a lot of awards. Now, the main thing is, as we usually do, I'm going to say whether you should go see it, then I'll talk a little bit about it, and then we'll have spoilers. So the first thing is, should you go see it? And it's a resounding yes. It's very different to a lot of Western films at the moment, and or should I say American films. I thought it was magnificent, full of humanity, empathy, lots of things that we probably need right now, and it almost feels like from a different world. And we'll talk about that a little bit after the break, but definitely go see this. Okay, I'll be back in a second. So this film, Call Me By Your Name, is set around 83, I gather, just from, because there's a couple of political references about Italy trying to find its feet, and the music and Thatcher and such like this. So it's set in a kind of world which we already, a couple of decades later, it's almost hard to reference because there's no iPads, no iPhones, and it's set in this sleepy Italian countryside in which there's two parents. One is Mr. Perlman, played by the great Michael Stuhlbarg, who I just love in everything. And he has a young son named Elio, played by Timothy Chalamet, and who's about 17. And every summer they get a postdoc student comes in to help them with the research, and this year it is Oliver, played by Armie Hammer. And very soon you see that they're developing a relationship, and it is counterbalanced with that they are both developing and exploring the world of this countryside, and it's almost an idyllic, to me anyway, idyllic place where people talk about classical literature, all the children are reading, there's no iPads, no iPhones, you come in for dinner, you eat as a family and you talk about things, and then you might go to a local dance or spend your summers reading and just trying to get relief from the heat in the river. And it's absolutely sensual in the way that we really don't think of life as that anymore, where a big delight is the meal and the conversation. A lot of these things have been lost, and could not imagine my son being able to do some of these things anymore because he would need Wi-Fi. The acting performances are great. I am no fan of Armie Hammer. He's good in The Social Network. I think he's a little bit stilted. This is his best performance by far. He has to play quite a complex kind of guy because he's a guy on the make. He's an American in Italy in a way which is really American. And he's also in this relationship with the boy, when I say boy, 17-year-old man, but a person who's, awakening to who he is, to his sexuality. Although that's never, even that is nice and murky. You don't get the feeling that these people are necessarily gay. You get the feeling that they're falling in love with each other and they just happen to be male. So it's quite murky that way. And you see both of them have relationships with girls as well of different sorts. It's really just a beautifully made film. it talks about loss, talks about that feeling, that excitement when you want to be with someone, that juxtaposition of, especially for a young man, of how much is lust and how much is of love, where the line is. But it also is talking about how this has happened for all of humanity. So Michael Stuhlbarg plays a professor, and in it he's talking about phonetics and ancient history, and they go and they're doing archaeological digs, and when you look at all the statues, they're of these beautiful young men. It's not lost on you that this is a story which has happened throughout history. And I really enjoyed it because in a lot of ways, there is not much plot. There is not much story. And you think, oh, well, you know, it's going to lose its pacing. And yet somehow it doesn't. You are always interested in what is going to happen. But in a lot of ways, there's not that much for me to talk about. It's just an acting tour de force. I'll come back with a couple of things that I don't want to ruin, so I'll put them in spoilers. Okay, so I'm back with spoilers, but there aren't really spoilers per se. But by the same chance, you know, if you haven't seen this film, you might not want to know about some of the things, how the film ties up. So one of the controversial things about this film is, for a film about youth, lust, in this case, gay sex, there is very little sex. There's really, I think, no nudity at all. There's actually a scene where they're consummating their love, and there's not a hard edit. The camera actually pans up and looks at the wall for about 5 seconds. So, and what that is showing is the director is making a clear choice that this is about sensuality, that this is about falling in love, and the emotional aspect of that act, and that you don't need to see it. We know what it's going to be. Now, there's been a bit of pushback from gay activists saying, well, you're kind of telling a gay story, but by shying away from showing the actual sex act itself, you know, you're, you know, pandering, I guess, to people who can't handle it. I'm not quite so sure. I think that everything he wanted to say, he gets across. So, I don't know. I mean, I'm like this for heterosexual as well. So sometimes showing the act itself kind of defeats the point. We all know what is happening, and sometimes imagination can be a little bit better. And I don't mean that in a prudish way, but just that, you know, there are clear artistic choices that can be made. The other famous scene is, there's a scene in which Elio, as I said, played remarkably well by Timothée Chalamet, where he masturbates into a peach, and then he gives it to Oliver at some point, and Oliver kind of threatens to kind of eat it. I did not like this scene at all, which just shows how prudish I am. But the whole thing, I thought, compared to how just finesse had been told the rest of the story, to me this just pushed it a bit too far. It was a bit gross, and but the director has said he wanted this scene in because it shows that when a young man especially, but anyone youthful, when they get hit by that wave of lust, that it just can come out in numerous ways. That wasn't a pun. And he wanted to show that it could be with, you know, you're not with a partner or anything. I personally thought it was just a bridge too far. I didn't particularly like that scene. There's two scenes I really do want to discuss, and they're both right at the end of the film, so I've put in spoilers. One is right near the end of the film, Michael Stuhlbarg, who I just think is just one of the great actors, and in fact, you could have a director's cut, which is just Michael Stuhlbarg talking about language, phonetics, and lecturing on ancient history and art, and he's just fantastic. He's a great actor, beautiful voice, and he gives this monologue, which was filmed on the last day of filming, and in it he says to Elio, "I know what has occurred. I know that you have fallen in love with Oliver," and by this point Oliver has left, gone back to the States, and he says, "I really am quite envious because at one point in his life he fell in love with someone, and it's kind of implied it probably was also a guy, and he could not act upon that feeling, and he liked that Elio has had this experience to be in love with someone so completely, and it is so full of humanity and empathy for Elio's position, because you could easily see a different speech in which Elio feels ashamed, or which he is being told by his father that he's made wrong decisions, or that he was too young, or all manner of things. But no, Stuhlbarg takes a different way. It's really underscored the way he gives the speech, and you really think that both of them are going to have a good relationship no matter what choices are made in the future. And beyond all that, it's just beautifully acted, both. And finally, the last shot of the whole film, and it goes for about, it seemed like 2 or 3 minutes, could have been longer because by the end of it, the credits start to roll through it. And it is Timothée Chalamet as Elio, and it's, I don't know how much later, 6 months later, it's now winter, and oh God, just as an aside, the winter shots of the same countryside, but now clothed in snow, absolutely beautiful. And he gets a phone call, and it is that Oliver, who they've been together with, is now going to get married to a woman, which again is this murkiness, but it also is almost this thing like he's left this fantasy land where he could indulge his feelings, and now he's back in America and he's got to settle down, and probably within the borders of what society thinks. Although you're not sure, he could just actually be just in love with that person because, you know, as I said before, it's all very not clear. Timothée Chalamet plays this by putting down the phone after hearing this news and sits in front of the fire, and behind him it's close, and behind him there is nothing for a long time, and then people setting up for dinner, and he, with no dialogue, looks just past the camera, and you know his heart is breaking, that all the fantasies of a future with Oliver, of a different world, of this person that he has given his complete heart to, will not happen now. And without any dialogue, you ride that wave within his eyes. Finally, tears come, and then right with about 10 seconds left, he smirks because he is remembering the good times, and he looks directly at the camera, identifying with you, me, the audience, that we have all had that feeling, or we will all have that feeling at some point. And he smiles, and the film ends, and it's magnificent. This is a great film. This is a film which is an antidote to the times we live in. It really is magnificent, and I think, you know, really any teenager could see it. I think this would be a great film for a teenager, and especially one who might be a bit conflicted about themselves. Yeah, this is a really, really good film. Please go see it. That's all for today. As usual, if you like what I'm doing, subscribe. You can push the button which will tell you when I do reviews, and I'm on Twitter at Guru Eden. And I'll talk to you soon, and very soon, because I've got a million films coming up. Okay, see you then. Bye.